So how do you reconcile, or how do I reconcile this anger that I feel because of like, I didn't realize how powerful Black life matters until I started to talk about being Black in my art. And that was something I never done before. I was talked about being me in my art, but I never directly addressed my Blackness and my queerness in my art until the second half of Ain't I a Woman. And I started doing more performances that were about anti-Black spaces, or being, or erasure of identity. And once I started doing that, like a whole world opened up for me, mentally and philosophically. But it's like, even with Black organizations, elite organizations, I feel like I'm begging them to recognize the power within alternative stories. Like, the second project I want to do deals with voodoo, which is a very taboo subject in the Black American community. And I want to talk about the aspects of voodoo that have been ignored in Western society, that have made this communal religion way more, I don't want to say potent, but I want to say like, I recognize myself in this religion more than any other religion I've seen. I see myself in this religion. And I think when the artist is creating art that isn't mainstream, that's one way of turning away from them. And then another way of turning away from them is if they're Black and they're doing it. Another way of turning away from them is if they're a woman, they're doing it. And then it's like, if you're queer, you got to be a certain type of queer. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's all these check boxes and labels and competition to get a message out. And I find myself very frustrated trying to get my message out.
Are you talking about like the procedures through which the art is mediated to the public? Like, are you talking about like institutional processes of like application and proposal and like those kinds of?
All of it,
You're talking about like concept?
all of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, the irony hit me. Like, I did this incredible lab with this university in New Orleans, but they didn't have a lot of um information regarding Black people outside of the 1960s in their archives, in their digital archives. So it was kind of cumbersome. And then we were doing this project with plagues. So we have the bubonic plague and the Justinian plague and all these plagues that came and wiped out so many people on Earth, but they only talk about a certain group of people. So we didn't really get to see and hear about Black people and plagues until yellow fever. And that process. And it was like, wow, okay. So I was intrigued by it. And then we got to AIDS, and I was very frustrated because the face of AIDS has always been gay white men. And I'm like, yo, there have been more Black men that have been bisexual, that have been homosexual, and straight Black women that are dying from AIDS, and there have been gay white men. And looking for myself in history and realize that there's this cover up, realize that there's this I don't know if it's deliberate all the time, there's this erasure, there's this narratives that haven't been told, and you have to dig and you have to fight and you have to push to find out and piece together like a quilt. It's difficult. It's difficult. It's very frustrating. And then on top of that, we had to write a proposal for the artwork that we wanted to produce. And like I said, mine was on Voodoo. And the irony of that, all that work that I put into it, it dawned on me. I'm like, I'm giving this proposal to white people. And then I was like, well, they get it. And then it's like, well, they get it versus Black people getting it. So I'm wondering, who am I creating this work for? And I often wonder, do you guys feel the same way? Do you feel like mid proposal or mid outline or even mid process, who am I creating this work for?
Um, Sorry, do I call you the Noir, or do you have another name that you'd like to be addressed as?
Wait, what?
Oh, I was saying, should I call you the Noir, like the name on the thing?
Oh, my name's Nicole. I just have no idea how to change that.
No, no, it's cool. I just wanted to check how I should.
The noir. I feel like a superhero.
I definitely don't. So I think we've only just met. Did we meet the other time? No, I don't think we really do. But uh, so I'm probably coming at this sideways, but uh, to the best of my ability to understand what you're asking, I think there are definitely times when I think whenever I feel like I need to ask who is this really for, or when I feel frustrated and when I feel lost, I think the best thing for me has always been to turn back to like, how does this work feed me? And um, and finding ways to construct a project or to construct actions that give me pleasure, ultimately make the project better. Like, I mean, it's holding that complexity of, okay, I want it to do these things because that would enable it to be successful in these external ways, but how do I do that and at the same time like first address the question of how does it make me happy, and how does it, like, what do I really want to do, what really feeds me, what would make me feel amazing, and from that place, like answering that question and then going back to like connect it with the other things is how I've solved it. But it's, and I actually found it's, I think that I mean, it's probably a little bit of like what's the term, what do you call it when someone gets kidnapped and then they like start to identify with their kidnapper?
Oh, Stockholm syndrome.
Thank you. It's probably a bit of Stockholm syndrome where, or like something where I'm like, you know, I'm probably deluding myself on purpose, but whatever I need to keep going. Okay. So the, I think when I do encounter difficulties, like I don't get that grant or I don't get picked or whatever, like as horrible and like as awful as those moments are, I actually also really embrace them as opportunities to say, you know what, maybe I'm not living my truth. Maybe I'm not actually approaching it the way I need to be approaching it. Because when I am like projecting and when I'm emanating who I need to be and when I'm most on my path, I can only imagine that it would be successful. So if I'm not successful at that, there's a block that I still need to get around. And it's not to say that there aren't systemic barriers and there's all kinds of like things that are beyond our control, and I'm not denying that at all. It's just that I have to believe that there are things I can do with that are within my power. Otherwise, you know, like otherwise what?
This one? Okay. 1 second, guys. Hold on. Distracting. There you go. I'm sorry. I was trying to be supportive, China. All right. But I mean, Helen, I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. Like trying to find pleasure into, like, I've been trying to really lean into myself and lean into the ideas and what the internal forces that really made me want to do this and really lean into that. I just, I don't know. Never I've never felt compelled to escape before in my art. I was always confronting something, but I never felt the urgent need to practice escapism and pull a Monet and just paint flowers while there's a fucking war going on. And
that's what you feel right now?
yeah.
So, sorry, can you explain to me why you shouldn't do that?
Why I shouldn't? Because I also signed up for what I call the Nina Simone School of Diligence. And like I admire Nina Simone, and she was just dedicated to the struggle of Black people and telling the story of Black people. And I mean, that's not all her work, but a lot of her work is that. If you look deep within the nuances of her work and the growth of her work, you can see that. And as an artist, she often said that you have to be a reflection of the times. I'm paraphrasing, but I don't know how diligent I can. I've never felt more tested than I do now by these times and by the ripple effects that they're creating.
Yeah.
Do you think Nina Simone, like, what do you think her process was like? Like, was she, because I think this is always a hard question for art making. Like, is your body a conduit for what's happening in the world and for your history and for what's happening in the present? Like, is it just that you exist and that you're like, your mind and your emotions and your craft like sort of channel those responses, or is it this like legislative or strategic process of identifying patterns and like pulling them out? Yeah, thanks, April. Is that the interview with Nina Simone about her process?
No, sorry, it's a different link.
Oh, she does have a really good interview about this, where she's like that she just kind of goes into a trance sometimes, which I think is sort of maybe what Helen is also speaking to, is like the emotional and psychological state of being a conduit or being a representative isn't always like an intellectual like research process, or
No, it's not.
know that what you're doing is speaking to your time period. Sometimes it is like a trust of yourself to be in the right place at the right moment, you know, like whatever you're drawn to or however you feel being the right thing. And like that balance seems really rough. I don't
I
know.
mean, I have to wonder, is it tapping into your fear? Because, like, I was thinking, like, I was listening to Run the Jewels and their new album, RTJ4. And Killer Mike, who is like an amazing activist and hip hop artist, he has this line where he says that people are so frozen and numb that they're going to film his death by the cops, and his last words would be, "I can't breathe." And then we have George Floyd dying in that same manner. So we have one man who was reflecting on how Eric Gardner died and produced that into his album and his fear being a big black man. And then we have a reflection of that. So it's art imitating life, imitating art. And I'm like, part of me is like, maybe I should just lay my fears out there in order to get through this, because it's like, that's the only thing that's viable in my work right now, in my written work, at least in my written work. Or maybe in my performance work as well.
Yeah, a lot of people have been talking about time too. Um, like uh, right now, like being black in the United States causes PTSD, but you don't experience PTSD until like after something is over. So an artist is in
Yeah.
an impossible position of trying to process their trauma and their stress like in the moment while it's happening. Um,
Mhm.
so that like temporal problem is, I think, especially present for performance makers. Like, in what moment? Like, are you most afraid like when you're like about to go to sleep at night? Can it happen during a performance as the thing? Like all of these, like where and how, like certain emotions are placed and how they're like reflected upon, um, are happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think you can, flashbacks are a funny thing because they're a form of PTSD. And I rely on the residual feelings that I get. Like, I wrote this poem and I performed it yesterday. It was about the fireworks, but to me they sound like bombs. So I wrote that. And I mean, it's what, it's definitely what is called shadow work. It deals with dark emotions and bringing that to light and unveiling, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Just unveiling what the things that we're hiding and the things that we're hiding from. But I never really understood Nina's process about her dedication to Black people and telling the stories, not just the stories of Black people. She told the emotions of Black people. Like, you can hear it in Mississippi, goddamn. You can hear it in I'm Feeling Good. You can hear it in Young, Gifted, and Black. What that meant, what she was carrying from her own disappointments. So, I mean, I'm sorry if I'm monopolizing y'all. I apologize.
I'm curious how how people pick their sort of spiritual or artistic ancestors, or mentors, or whatever you want to call it. Like, you have Nina Simone, and I'm curious like how other people found theirs. Like, I'll this is not a mentor, but I found a book of some collected letters between oh my god, today seems to be a day where I can't think of any nouns. Uh, the painter who does all the like volvular flowers, Georgia O'Keeffe. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Okay, that's actually a different book. No, there's another book between some poet and I'm so sorry. This is the worst story. I have the collected letters between like some poet and for all her editors, and it's like brutal. Like she's a poet, and to me, like, the poem is this sacred thing, except for like they write these like they're like full on, like, it's like all the writing that they do over the poem, telling her what to delete or what they like or don't like. It's like insane. And I feel I gather courage from that. Like, I'm like, this woman made it through all of that. I don't know. She dealt with it like a professional. And so like I have weird pockets of like sustenance, like sort of that I go to. And I definitely think I could use more of them. So I'm just wondering, you have Nina Simone. How did you come across her, and if other people have any? I mean, not
That's
that
a good question.
but I mean,
That's
how
a
did
good question.
yeah.
I mean, I came across Nina Simone by watching a movie, Point of No Return, and they were playing different Nina Simone singles throughout the movie, and I was like, wow, this woman is amazing. And as I got older, I got to delve in more into her music and her philosophy and her ideas about being Black and Black people. But then again, I've seen the wreck and the damage of that dedication, because the letdowns have been so big, so utterly just without mercy. So, I mean, for me, it's a testament. It's a testament to her genius, but it is also a heartfelt sense of warning. And I felt I could relate to her. I felt I could relate to being this kid who has these talents and secrets and this different language of speaking and living, and having to support everyone and trying to be that person, and that never worked. Never worked for me. So, I mean, I don't want to give up, and I don't want to give out, and I don't want to give in, but I mean, I don't find flowers mediocre, and I don't find escapism mediocre. But when I see certain works of art at times like this that is not connecting, I don't think that's fair. And that doesn't mean everybody should be talking about the same thing, but I feel like when 9/11 happened, there was no excuse not to make art about 9/11. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel like, but but you're asking this, I think, also in order to encounter, you know, a contrarian perspective. So for the sake of being contrarian, I don't know. I don't know that that seems very like, I don't know. I mean, it is a big social movement, and there are many, like we are in a. I guess I'm really hesitating because what comes to mind is Emerson, and I really hate to like quote like an old white dead guy right now, but
If he's relevant, he's relevant.
yeah. Well, so Emerson was a transcendentalist. Is that what they called themselves? I forget, something like that. And then, but he really has this thing where he talks about how each person has their own like field to plow, and you just focus on your field. And I think about like Susan Sontag, who she has this thing where she talks about the writer needs to be four things or something. There's the fool, the stylist, the critic, and then there's a fourth one. I don't remember what it is, but she says above all, the fool is the most important. So being foolish enough to open your mouth and just, or to put your pen to paper and say the things that are actually happening for you. And Emerson said something similar, where it's like, it really takes a superior person, he says man, but person, to, superior, I don't know if he says that, but it takes a special kind of person, it takes an artist to believe that something that is true for yourself can be true for others. And so when you are like the most truthful and living out your individual subjectivity, I really believe that that is the role of the artist. And like whatever is that tension in you between the flowers and the revolutionary moment we're in, and the Nina Simone like School of Hard Knocks, or School of, I forget what you called it.
School of Diligence.
Diligence. Okay, that's a much better word. I feel like if you can, sorry, I don't even know what your medium is. It's like poetry and performance and maybe painting. But if you work within that space and articulate that tension, like if that's what's in you, then I think that that holds value. I think, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I can't know what's going to happen, but I feel like that is the most important thing for artists to do, to just turn, like, I mean, I don't want to say turn your insides out, but kind of like that.
You know, this also reminds me of, sorry, was someone else talking?
Oh, I was going to say something, but
Oh,
should I?
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like, I feel like for myself, an artistic process, like, we often have this idea of like this or this, but my experience anyway is it's always and it's just always this accumulation of different things. And perhaps you're really feeling flowers right now, and I think that you should like embrace the feeling, that feeling of flowers. It also doesn't mean you have to be like, I had this big moment with flowers and now I need to tell the entire fucking world about flowers, right? Like you can also just,
Yeah.
you can keep that work to yourself until the moment you're like, I think people are ready for flowers now. You know what I mean? Like I feel like, especially with performance, we're always in the state of needing to like present. And I think there's also a powerful thing about making a bunch of stuff and hiding it away as a moment that feels correct. I guess that's what I wanted to say about that. Also, Nina Simone is a monumental figure to like try to live up to, and like I don't know, like
Yeah, I know. She is really a mountain.
That's like, I can get there, like makes me like, wow, I wouldn't even like, you know, what a bold, like, and also then you take on all the, like the challenging, frightening things about her life as well, I think, when you try to like match up to that too closely, right? Anyway, my 2 cents.
No, that's very related to what I was going to say about, because we were talking about, Helen, you were bringing up Emerson and Sontag. I think maybe like Fred Moten is also maybe speaking more to like our contemporary moment regarding subjectivity and like the role of the artist. And he definitely makes a distinction in the Undercommons with Stephen Harney between like fugitive tactics, which are like you hang on to your subjectivity in the face of being told you're not a subject, like politically and socially. An artist, especially a Black artist, is like defining a subjectivity that resists or escapes like a dominant monolithic conception of like human mankind, right? And to a certain extent, like women and other people of color and queer people also experience that sort of like desubjecting, whatever. But he contrasts that. So that's a fugitive tactic as opposed to escapism, which refuses that role of subject. So that's different than like painting flowers because you like there's a difference between painting flowers because that defines your subjecthood versus painting flowers because you've been divested of all the other ways of communicating, like being forced to just paint flowers, you know? So I think it's hard for individual artists to tell if you're being like disabused of your subjectivity and being demanded to make something that doesn't speak to like grand humankind because you're being told you can't do that, versus being like, no, this is the thing that I have to do in my location as a subject, and that it may not be accepted, or you know, there's no way for that thing to be seen by the empowered. And I think that like the difference in emotional feeling between those two like motivations too, in this analogy, paint flowers, like an artist can only learn over time which feeling they're having in a moment. Like, are you being told to do this by someone else, or are you hanging on to it for yourself? I don't know if other people like are make it. Yeah, yes, I'm gonna say.
I guess that's something very possibly naive and simple to say. Kind of in reflection to what Annie and Esther are saying. But just simply like, you know, do you let's say you do paint flowers in the way that Annie's describing, and there's questioning like, do you think maybe like in 10 years, like if you look back, would you be able to forgive yourself for you painted flowers, like even like in 5 years, or 1 year, or a few months, or a month, or even like I don't know, even like imagining Nina Simone looking down on you, like do you think she would forgive you for maybe forgive's not the right word, but I don't know, like which maybe like could you think like lovingly to yourself that way? And do you think maybe she could think lovingly to you that way? Because you know, obviously this artist making very meaningful much. I think, yeah, that's yeah. I'm not.
No, that's amazing. I never thought about that. I never, because I have so many different heroes and heroines. Not all of them are Black and not all of them are queer, but those that are near and dear to my heart have those connotations. And I say that to say this. I never want to feel that I missed out on something important. Even though there are a lot of important things that I missed out on, you can't catch everything in your work or in your life. But one of the reasons why I didn't leave the city was because I wanted to be in the thick of it. Like I gotten so many offers to leave the city, and I'm still getting them. And that's another nail in the coffin about this privileged space that art has. So it's like on one hand, I'm not very privileged at all, and on the other hand, I'm highly privileged. And it's like this is a conundrum I've never had to wrestle with before. That's coming with popularity, that's coming with growth, that's coming with uh instantaneous quote unquote shine and attention. And these questions are underlined in that. Like, could I put, huh?
One thing that, so like going back to one of the reasons was like, who are you making the work for? What are the motivations? Where is the interest? And then Helen saying like, find what in the work you're interested in that like moves you. And then feeling like a hesitation towards what is interesting or moves you in the moment, maybe it's like benign or not interesting because maybe it's something as like casual as flowers. But I think something that's very cool to think about is no matter whatever you're doing, even just like a window or making a mark, it is inevitably impacted by the moment and the experiences that you were living in. So like it is a moment. You might not be making work that's directly in conversation with that moment, but I think the fact that you are making work in a moment is inevitably directly in conversation with the moment because your body is here in this time and it's so that's something cool.
Also, I want to say, Nicole, it sounds like you're right. Like you're right in the midst of it, and you're about to like work something up.
I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know. I know I'm in the midst of it, and I'm not going anywhere. I just sorry about that. I got thirsty. I just I want to make work that I'm proud of. Whether it's about flowers or a revolution, or flowers being a part of a revolution or not. And I want to remind myself that there's beauty in the world. I just don't want it's not that I don't want to create work that's lighthearted. I don't want it to become I don't want to get lost in a daydream. You know what I'm saying?
Why not? What are the consequences of being lost in a artistic process? Like that to me sounds really sad that an artist isn't able to be fully absorbed by their work because of the extreme pressure and the sort of existential crisis of being seen, not only by society, but also by themselves. Like having too harsh of a judgment for like your own work, and it's like legacy, for example, does I think prevent artists who have this like responsivity to the world, from really like, I don't know, maybe this is back to the pleasure thing that Helen was, I don't know, have you read Adrienne Marie Brown's Pleasure Activism?
No.
I really like her conceptualizations of like absorption and like what kinds of personal processes are revolutionary. He's really good.
Also, I think also for me, and I think for like everyone who like kind of had someone in their lives, whether they were directly in their lives or you saw them in books or television or whatever media you consume, sort of understanding the difference between like an idealization and then like what this person's putting out in the world and like wanting to emulate that or wanting to be like that, and sort of realizing more. For me, it's more understanding like I've had to like back up. So like I had an uncle who was a painter. A lot of you know that. I was privileged enough to grow up watching him work. And when he died in 2005, I spent a lot of time in depression and constantly feeling like I had to live up to this image I had of him versus being in conversation with him on a longer timeline as an artist. So like Nina Simone, like is someone who is on a timeline just like all of us, but her work kind of is before our time maybe, but we can kind of understand it in like a lineage sense. And sort of thinking about maybe Nina as like someone you can speak to or talk to, and use more as like to give yourself permission in some way. Like maybe like there's artists before us or people before us who've had to like have like greater strife in order for us to get to where we are now, and like giving yourself more permission and less feeling like anxious or shame or something that you can't like live up to this sort of person or something, or this idea you have of this person, because inevitably like Nina Simone is a fantastic artist, creative mind, but if you're constantly trying to be these other people, you can't really be yourself. And I think Nina Simone would probably want you to be able to paint flowers. Like I don't, I just think that like, I don't think that that's bad. I don't think that you should feel ashamed of wanting to do that, I guess is my point. And I think that you have to decide how you give yourself permission to do that. Or if you don't want to, maybe you don't give yourself permission.
No, it's not that I don't want to see flowers and I don't want to be immersed in the work. It's just that there is a sense of duty that I have to the struggle and to the people. And that's something, I mean, I say Nina Simone, but that's something that's been implanted in me since I was a kid. And even though I left traditional activism because I had a lot of problems with it, and embraced it more in my art, I feel like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I want to be recreational when I have the time, and rest when I have the time, and draw birds and flowers when I have the time. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to order from Blick after we get off of this, so I can have my own drawing pads and stuff and start doing that again. But incorporating that into an artist practice, I would feel neglectful of so many people that don't have voices right now. And it's not to put so much importance on my voice, per se, but I'd be one of many that are sharing that duty. I wouldn't be alone, but I'd be carrying some weight. You understand?
But do you think that it's some people's duty though to like still be able to figure out ways to bring like joy into the world and have people see that? I don't know. Does everyone have to suffer at the same time? I don't know.
Why is responsibility suffering? I mean, I don't think I think there's sort of like a dichotomy being pitched here between like, I mean, like what you used the word recreational, Nicole, like this
Yeah.
idea that some art is like beside the point, kind of like it's not engaged in a revolutionary or liberatory struggle, right? It's like
No.
There's some art that's a luxury.
Some art is just pretty pictures.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. However, as when we think about it in a performative way, the acts of making art are always politicized. Like who makes art is always a part of the work itself. And it's very different for different people to paint the same kind of thing. Like even if you're writing a poem about flowers, who you are as a person and where that's coming from and how your psychology and your emotions are affecting that thing, like does that not kind of blur the boundaries between like art as a parasitic, like kind of luxury leisure type activity versus art as being aligned with like a project for freedom? How are those things different for different people? Or like how do you know even which thing you're doing? Like you could be experienced throughout time as different kinds of things. Like I think like Walt Whitman thought Leaves of Grass was like the most political poem in the world, you know?
Yeah.
But now it seems really kind of, to me anyway, this is a judgment, like kind of froofy, do you know?
There's some parts I can take and some parts I can leave. I'll admit it. When it comes to Leaves of Grass, like I said, it's not necessarily a singular voice, as in Nicole Goodwin's singular voice being elevated to the lexicon of Nina Simone. That's never going to happen. Not in my lifetime, anyway. But I am compelled by my emotions and called to duty at the same time. And I don't want to be a dick and say I don't think y'all can understand that because of race, but I don't know. I truly don't know because it's like I can't ignore the suffering of my own people. And I'm like, does that mean should I ignore my own suffering in order to adopt the suffering of my people?
That's a great question. I think if you ask your cultural racial peers, like I think everyone would agree that no, you totally like when you're living your best life, you are living the best life for everybody else, right? Like I just feel like that's yeah. And then speaking like not to your like racial experience, but to mine, like as a person of color, I started off in the beginning when I was still in school wanting to do this like hybrid theater, and it was like Chinese opera meets like Western theater, and it was going to do all these things and formally like, you know, innovate and blah, blah, blah. And then I just like, I couldn't, like, I felt like at the time it wasn't any kind of, how do I say this? There have been various points in my journey as like an advocate and, or like activist and as an artist where it just felt like it was too difficult and I wasn't enjoying it. And I felt like the world's a really big place and there's so much more that can be done. And if other people are better at doing that thing, then like, great, like, please do it. And I will find my own thing that I'm really great at doing. And sorry, I just lost you for a second. And then, yeah, and like, I feel lucky. And then now people ask me, how did you do what you're doing? And it's like, because nobody else was doing it. I think you should like live your truth. I don't know. I feel like I'm repeating myself. I am repeating myself now. But I just, yeah, I feel like if you're asking if you should give yourself permission, I'm all for it.
I have something that I'd like to add because I've been kind of practicing Zen Buddhism, and in that practice, through the suffering of myself, you have compassion for the others. So then I guess the question is like, how do you know that your suffering is your suffering? You know? How do you distinguish your suffering from other people's suffering? So it's an open question.
Yeah, that's
meaning like I think to separate others' suffering from my own suffering, and then separate my own suffering from others, creates this kind of separation of I versus others, which is a kind of a very Western concept, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Like when the reason why I could say of my own suffering is because, case in point, I've been having a really hard time with the fireworks because I was deployed and fireworks sound like bombs and gunfire. So that's my particular experience coming back to haunt me. My neighbors might just be in the way and be like, God, that sounds like gunshots. And to me, I'm counting. Nobody talks about the war anymore. And it's been going on for 19 years. And we don't talk about it. And we're so busy fighting the war here that we don't see that it's spread all around the world in different ways and shapes and cognitive practices. And until we do that, I can't have my feelings connect. It's a Rubicon in between my feelings and the feelings of my people here and their relationship to the world. So I mean, that's for me. That's how I can answer your question. Can't speak for anybody else. So.
Certainly, I think it's a very classical Western problem also. I mean, from, this sort of like Eurocentric trajectory of like Greek philology through like sort of German idealism to talk about art as being invested in a project of freedom and art being responsible for evincing suffering. Like that's the sort of definition of art for like Nietzsche, for example. Like that's what he says is like, all of the old dead white art theorists say like that art is about suffering. It should be made by the people who are suffering the most, as a way of connecting like human being, like to representing and realizing how to survive ourselves, basically. That's sort of what art is for processing trauma, and it's for not necessarily like not like bridging conflict or like trying to share or saying people are the same or anything like that, but that art is always a product of suffering. There's no other place from which like those self-recognitions can come, because our very definitions of human being, like humanization itself, is a recognition of suffering. So I think that's a really, it's kind of resurgent right now. And I don't know if those ideas are relevant at all to contemporary makers of art. I don't know if, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Like, do you think that all art comes from suffering? Or that human being is defined by suffering?
I don't know. It just sounds very like it reminds me of this kind of a Catholic idea, you know, of like debt to like, okay, we are like I mean not we, like, because I'm not Catholic, but like, you know, like the human being is in debt to the God, you know. So the existence of the human being as a debt to, which is like, I don't know. To me, it's like, you know, like, because there are like whole other kinds of art that was more about ritual and celebratory, and also connections. So that's, you know, it's like, I mean, I don't think one is, you know, one should negate one another or something. Like, it's just a
No, I mean, I want to celebrate. That's the point. And I'm like, I'm trying to find something in this time to celebrate through my work.
I mean, I was attending socialist conference like on July 4th, and the people were kind of celebratory. They were very optimistic. Meaning like, this is like, you know, like this, well, first of all, they were connecting the racism with the capitalism. Racism as a basis and foundation for enabling capitalism. So, this is really a great opportunity to turn it over. If we're gonna defund the police, where we gonna bring the money to? Are we gonna bring it to the universal income, you know, universal income, universal healthcare, cooperative movements? So they were pretty celebratory. Also, I just also wanted to say, like, you know, I was just, this is not really a kind of a well-established idea, but I was thinking when you were talking about Nina Simone, during Nina Simone, there was also an experimental jazz movement, like AACM, and they were more, you know, like they were more in a kind of a communal, sort of non-capitalistic model of producing, which was not really about individual artists, but more about the collective. And they you know, they continued on up till now, and they will never be a kind of a major figure like Nina Simone, or, you know, I mean, I love Nina Simone, and don't get me wrong, I want to retire in south of France like she did. You know, but like, so I'm just thinking, like, her struggle was also had to do with her placement in the world, which was very much in a kind of a market capitalist society.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Not that AACM didn't struggle from that, but I'm just saying that the position is very different.
I mean, her career was a struggle upward, upstream her entire life.
Your sound quality changed, Noah.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Well, I think you're not on. I don't know. I feel like, are you on a phone?
Yeah, I'm on my phone.
Oh, I think somehow we're like not on speakerphone or something now. Like you sound farther away. Maybe try turning mic on.
Hello?
You're very quiet.
Hello? It's just so
We can just lean in. We can take, yeah, we can still hear you.
you can talk close to the phone.
Yes, we can hear, like it's clear.
It's just weird. It's just, oh my god. Okay, hold on. Hello? No, because they want to see my face. Why? I don't know, Shiloh. I don't know why they want to see my face.
We're hearing your person over there as well. So it is clear.
You can hear her. She's making herself known tonight. I don't know why. What was I saying? How can I put what I say, what I want to say in words? I think I'm at my most vulnerable right now because I turned in that proposal, and I think what it is not that I'm not. I'm certain it's not going to be chosen to be done. That's number one. Number two, I'm certain it's not going to be looked at with the same discretion as their past artists have done. Number three, I feel when I compare, you know what? James Baldwin never got to be obtuse. You know what I mean? And
What do you mean by obtuse?
he never got to be convoluted. His message was always clear. Even when his style of writing changed, he never got to be as he never got to be like, he could have never written A Breakfast at Tiffany's. And it had gone over. You understand what I'm saying? Even though this is one of my favorite movies, it's not a great movie. It's not. It really isn't. There are way better movies than that movie. And even the movie is better than the short story. So it's like James Baldwin had to be on top of his game every single time he did something out the gate. He had to be a thoroughbred. He had to be a winner. It had to be a hit in order to be remembered. It's like a joke that Chris Rock said. He said, in my neighborhood, we have the queen of R&B, which is I can't think of it, Mary J. Blige. We have him, who's a mediocre, he called himself mediocre comedian. He said, you know what the white neighbor in my neighborhood has to be in order to afford his home? A dentist. And that's how I feel. You could be an all right dentist who gets paid well as an artist and get your work somewhere. But I have to be a thoroughbred to be remembered. And that's where my anger is. Don't hate me, y'all. I know there are more entertaining things we could be talking about.
No, it just fucking sucks. Yeah, it's just a true paradigm. There's no, I mean, all we could say is just like, yup. Yeah. There is like two part. I mean, there's the socioeconomic part of it.
Yeah.
When you're talking about James Baldwin, it's like trust. You know, it's like if you're not trusted to that what you're doing is good already, then it just has to be, you know, 3 times as clear. Like you don't get to experiment or innovate. You don't get to make a mistake. You know, like a lot of yeah. There's all is yeah. Yeah, that's really the only thing that any of us can do anything about, though, I think, is like there can be artistic spaces where you can experiment or fail, or people still love you and they respect you as an artist and they think you're incredible and that you will be the next Nina Simone, like, you know, that you can do the work, that you can be slightly less sure, or you can be more opaque, you know, in certain contexts. So that's really the only thing that like a community like this can ever do about this paradigm, really, is to be like, do your worst thing now. Like here's 3 hours, you know, or, you know, read your poems that you're not sure about in this moment and we'll still care about you and respect you. You know what I mean?
But I cling to y'all, and that's why it's like, that's why I say I'm spoiled. Because I'm like, I cling to y'all. I'm like, I love the idea of not having to be good as long as I'm authentic.
That's not spoiling. That's the bare minimum of mattering. Like that's why what Iki's saying about like artistic community, like this is the only project for the liberation of the arts that we have at our disposal, is to make sure that we create contexts in which artists can work as free people. Like that it's not that you're not beholden to those institutional paradigms that oh, Rocky's saying something.
Mm.
Yes. Yep. Very well said, Rocky. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's humanization, is you're just like, well, your person is complex. And sometimes your art is abstract, you know, sometimes it's flowers, sometimes it's the thing that needs to be said to the revolutionary moment, you know, that full array can happen in some way. But we have to work hard to make that. I don't know, it doesn't just like, and I don't think it's clinging, it's like we manifest it through gathering like this, like we all show up and appear for it, and then it is materialized by those acts of appearance.
Yeah. Yeah. I just felt so swallowed. Maybe I'm just coming off of the energy of that month, because it was all of June, pretty much from the 5th until the 26th. And the combination of things, of my own angst and the angst of the people, is like really conjoined. So I feel like a powder keg right now, and I'm glad I was able to release some of that. just into the vapor and it not be miasma. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I will start something with flowers and it turns into something else. Just to challenge myself and do what I'm afraid of outside of the work that I'm doing right now or the work that I'm preparing to do. And then be a personal narrative of sorts and meaning something. I don't know.
Well, are you being literal about flowers? I thought this was a metaphor you're talking about.
I mean, I used to draw birds a lot
Okay.
as a therapeutic practice.
Mhm.
And then Shyla stole all my fucking drawing books. So I have to get new ones. So that's why I said I'm a order from Blick the minute I get off from you guys. Because I really wanted to buy some drawing paper for myself and get back into that self the yoke of myself. Like I was doing that a lot with the digital painting, and I still want to do that. I just don't know where that's going to go either in the long run. So,
Well, you'll have to bring them back and show us. I want to see the flowers. We're gonna have a performancy forum that's just called Nicole's Flowers.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
That'd be really great.
So it is 10:06. We kind of maybe wrap this up for bedtimes and Dick Blick website browsing. Is there anything else that people want to say? Next week, Sierra Ortega is we're going to break things together first. So that'll be nice and cathartic. And then Sierra is going to give us sound for 24 hours.
Wow.
So that will be something. Yeah. And as
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to briefly share that in relationship to flower and gardening, that I'm trying to build this garden with my neighbor who is an African American man who, older man. And so the dilemma here is that he wanted to buy plants from Home Depot. And I wanted to talk to him about the Monsanto program, but I don't know how to do that. So that's my political challenge. just so you know, flower can be political.
Okay. That's something true.
Also, I think drawing, like related to the voodoo, I feel like drawing is always a process, is always a ritual process. Like marking something into appearance is also very like, I know there are, related to performance too, like drawing of circles and certain shapes and things like that is magic practice.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
Okay.
Monsanto and magic. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Love you all.
Thank y'all. Thank you for putting up with me.
Thank you. See you next week.
Yay.
Thank you. Yeah, see you next week. Thank you.
Good to see you, Helen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much.